So now that that's all done with the poll and all that good stuff, I'm gonna.
The link I posted is unrelated to the OGL stuff directly. It's explicitly for the SRD and it pertains to them being released under Creative Commons.
I was hoping this would copy a link to it, but apparently it's not. So I'm just gonna do a snipping tool and take a picture of the results because it's not giving me a copy pasta link. Bam, save, and Discord grabbing the thing. Downloads. Alright, so it's a little bit surprising to me, but the system of Unbound has heavily won out amongst the community, actually. Got a little close near the end, but for a good while they're actually like 20 points ahead of all other systems. Which is interesting. Yeah, it's pretty unique. So from the looks of it, the community, as well as I don't know how many of I didn't look at the individual responses, but like who did what. But I imagine some of the staff is also pretty interested in drawing out some Unbound, which is, nice. Very nice indeed. It is a complicated system, so for those who have any issues with this, feel free to mention them now. We do have the creator of the system, who's currently typing, Lex, who is here with us. They can answer any questions you may have. I ran Unbound for several sessions now. Lex has ran many sessions, being the creator, so they can provide insight on it. I think that we can transition to the system without too much of an issue. Main being that a lot of the core mechanics we're already really handling, but there are some unique mechanics that would be different that we would need to learn. We would need to teach our DM team how to handle. Yeah, this is a poll of what's going on. It's not a set in stone thing, but if everyone's good with it, we can go forward with, hey, look, we're sticking with Unbound. Judging from the poll results, I think that we should, but I'm open to hear, concerns, comments, questions, things of that nature. Oh, damn. So Unbound is a D20 system. It is a classless system, so there is a difference there. However, every class in 5e essentially can be remade in Unbound through the use of the talents, which essentially are both feats and class features. So combined, they make, the core thing. Feel free to answer any questions in more detail, Lexo, when you want to.
If you want, I can kind of give my elevator pitch.
Yeah, give an elevator pitch.
All right, so for those of you that don't know, I'm Lexa. As I mentioned, I did a post in the council chat. Unbound was originally started about 6 years ago as a we don't want to play Pathfinder anymore. There's oh god number blow. But the group we were playing with felt the initial release of 5e was a bit too content light. Hence, as many of you have probably seen, the amount of homebrew even European has made for 5e. It has progressed away from being a Pathfinder derivative into its own thing. And nowadays is meant to be more in between of older frontier systems, but we've actually adapted most, if not all, quality of life rule sets from systems like 5e and other systems, and basically look around everywhere for inspiration. The biggest thing is there are no classes and there are no traditional levels. However, before there is panic of, oh god, no classes, the different ability trees are actually fairly well structured, where the classes are there just without the name of the class, effectively. You can make an alchemist, you can make a paladin, you can make a cleric.
Touching on to that, one of the things that we're looking into to helping to jump new players into the system is making essentially pre-built XP packages, which are going to be basically classes. So people do have the option in that regard.
Yes. The big thing is freedom of creation. For those of you who have played Pathfinder, I've played more and run more Pathfinder than 5e. I have run 5e, so I'm going to reference that a bit. But I believe 5e has also archetypes that trade out class features. Think of it kind of like that, where you can go into a game and say, you know what, I want to play flavor-wise a paladin, so I can pick up smite and maybe some divine magic and some martial skills. Maybe I want to use a great sword, stuff like that. But for whatever reason, I don't like this ability. You can just pick a different ability for the same price. So that's essentially how I like to describe it in that way.
Mhm. Yeah.
I've also seen some concern about like FOMO and analysis paralysis. And as I mentioned in my previous message, which Nerp can attest to, I have a player in my Saturday game which has some of the worst FOMO you could probably imagine.
Mm-hmm.
But by how we have our ability structured, you're actually guided towards what you can purchase pretty easily once you get an initial theme chosen.
So for your question, Bloopy, pretty much, Mutants Masterminds is an XP shop system where you build your character based off the initial experience you have. Same thing with Unbound. You have a base experience that you start with, and that builds your initial character, and then you gain experience through actions, narrative quests, completing challenge, and so on and so forth. Things that we already have a system for. That will then you can then spend that experience to provide upgrades to your character
Yeah.
using the same XP shop.
And as for legacy, uh, complexity of character creation, I think technically on paper it is a bit more complex. However, like I said, the biggest thing is once you figure out like a theme for the character, there's pretty obvious directions of, oh, I'll pick this, I'll pick this. I believe on average, like a brand new character can have 3 to 4 abilities at a creation, and you pick those pretty quick. And then from there, you granular. It is a very gradual upgrade, so it's not like you're a level-based thing where you get 5 abilities every 4 sessions. You could get 1 ability every session or every other session. Um,
So regarding the scaling concerns for Living World, Unbound does have a version of levels in that there are power grades from apprentice to grandmaster, and then technically there's some like epic level stuff. So those would be essentially our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 type of things. Would be apprentice, journeyman, professional, master, grandmaster.
yeah. And the way that works, those level grades, is certain abilities cannot be purchased until you reach a certain level grade.
Mm-hmm.
So, power wise, characters are fairly in line with each other. There isn't huge gaps for the most part. DMing the system, it's a standard D20 system. Most of the rules are 5e or simplified. Our action economy is a bit different, but the same and fairly simple.
A good way to look at it is if you've been DMing Syrik 5e, so like all my crazy changes with like, charging and flanking and all that good stuff, you're going to feel fairly familiar with Unbound. If you've only ever ran 5e, you're going to need some training. Because there are definitely more tactical options that it has over base 5e. Which is something that we'll need to consider for determining if it is a good system to go with.
Yes.
Because
However,
it is definitely crunchy.
yeah, but I will say, I don't know if everyone didn't read the post I made. The crunchiness should never be a surprise. Like
Mm-hmm.
the different rule sets, many of the rule sets, you will know if you're going to need them. Like if you have a flying character, hey, you might need to know the flight rules. If not, well, you don't have to worry about that. And kind of as Nurk said, a lot of the things that work in 5e were whole other things he had. So you would have had to learn them anyway. Um,
There are some additional rules that I don't have, but those ones, like Lex said, they are very much a look at them as needed. So,
Also, Witch Reaver, you're mentioning gap in terms of player builds. I mentioned this in my post I made. Unless a player goes out of their way to build a character whose abilities don't work together at all, like they're going out of their way to make an objectively bad character, it's very, uh, it's virtually impossible to make a bad character. It will have a use. In my opinion, at least. Nerpier is in one of my games, and he made a character that is incredibly spread out, and he's holding his own with the hyper focused characters in the group.
Blood for the Blood God. Regarding the time issue, there is definitely going to be, training in that regard. So, like, if you don't think you have the time to learn a crunchy system, no worries. If you need a break, if we do switch to Unbound, feel free to have a break. If you think you can come back to it later, shiny. If we end up not using Unbound, we're happy to have you. Either which way. That said, a lot of the things that we've been doing are going to be very familiar with Unbound. So if you've DM'd Syrik, you're going to pick up Unbound fairly quickly. That's the big thing here is that if you have the knowledge, you should be fine. It shouldn't take too long. It's just as a player, it might seem daunting, but it's essentially just instead of choosing a level 1 in fighter, you're going to be choosing like 3 different talents. And just because of the book's size, it's like immediately like, oh god, this is crazy. Instead of being like, oh, if you shorten this book about 500 pages, it's about what 5e is.
Well, and
because a lot of that is just excess text size and whatnot.
Yeah, well, and half the book is DM rules.
Yeah.
Our current playtest PDF, when we go to publish, it's going to be 3 different books. So that's simply why it's so big right now. We could easily make I'll get that into one second. Let me scroll. I just lost my train of thought. Nerp could easily take the PDF and cut out the stuff only players need, and it would probably be half the size.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, honestly, the crafting system alone takes up about 200 pages of the book, and that is optional rules for players if they want to go crazy.
Indeed. But let me scroll up a bit and answer some questions.
Yeah. While you're looking at questions, I have a quick thing to bring up. If you're also having I don't really know if I can DM this, feel free to just hop in as a player. We're going to be running some test games if we do stick with Unbound, or I might post up some like one shots. People who have knowledge of Unbound, feel free to post up your own one shots using the system, and you can learn by playing. And if you start feeling comfortable with it, cool. If you don't feel comfortable with it, we can revisit this in a little bit to make sure everyone's still on the same page. Because this is basically a first view of what people's opinions are on the system. I'm going to be working on the Spheres of Divinity, and I'm going to be working on Unbound. So both will be gaining progress. Both will be gaining progress for a Living World and Either Which Path, because those are the two runner-ups. We do not know, Zach. I would need to look through the votes to see who has voted for what to determine what the breakdown is. Yeah. Spheres is down by about 15, 20 votes, I believe. I'd have to look at the proximity there. Because some of the side votes in that picture I posted, like 4 or 5 of them are for Spheres as well. It's just the name was different when they voted.
Okay, so we do have a full framework for map tools.
Yes.
NERP has made most of it. It's quite robust. We're actively looking into getting a framework made for Foundry. We're probably going to hire someone to do that. Another important thing, we're actually looking into getting a online website made with an SRD and eventually an app similar to like D&D Beyond for dedicated online character sheets. It will be completely free. Yeah, full characterization app. We're currently going around getting quotes for that, but that will be happening this year, regardless of if the Living World adopts the system. As for Legacy's question, there really isn't multi-classing. However, you can play a fighter with spells or a wizard with a sword. NERP is actually doing that in my game.
Regarding wasting of experience, there's not really any wasted experiences. There might be some like unoptimal choices depending on what thing you're doing currently. So like if you're in a heavy combat mission, you might not want to buy something that's more of like a utility feature instead of a combat heavy feature. But it really just depends on what you're doing, and most people will probably buy things based on what they're doing at the time. So it's more of like a natural progression of a character rather than I'm now level 2 fighter because I leveled up.
One thing we've really focused on with the system is, like I said before, unless you're going out of your way to make choices that contradict each other, there is no optimal choice. It's just a different type of character.
Probably should put that in quotations because they're not really mistakes.
But the big thing is a broad character spread into a bunch of different skills will still feel as powerful, from my perspective, as a hyper-focused character. And purely the fact that they can apply to more situations. And there are ways to retrain. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will say, for testing purposes, feel free to keep testing out Syrik 5e because I'm still working on that. Also, if you're feeling up to it, I'd very much appreciate if you guys test out Unbound as a DM and run some test games for the community here, preferably streamed so people who are not able to run can get an idea on how it works.
Wait. Oh, and as for like making enemies and stuff in Unbound, we actually, as has been mentioned, NERP is actually paid and working for us, our team. One of his big projects is the Monster Creator, which is actually somewhat simpler than the one you guys are already using. We haven't converted it to a spreadsheet to make it really quick yet. but it's in a usable stage.
Yeah.
So
It is fully usable. It can work from levels apprentice to grandmaster as is. It's more fine tuned towards apprentice and German right now, so I'm still testing the higher levels of play. But once it is tested properly, we can get it on a spreadsheet like we have with the 5e one, and you can make monsters in like a couple minutes. Right now, it takes a bit of time because you don't have a spreadsheet to do boop boop boop, but it still gives you a decent bit of monsters. Like I think I made a fairy dragon in about 30 minutes. So yeah, without a spreadsheet. So I had to look through things and find stuff. Creatures have the same categories as we have for our Syrik 5e. There's a few additions to that, but for us, for our purposes of Living World, we'll have a few minor changes to the particular types of labels, but otherwise it's the same exact setup, yeah. Mainly because some of the bestiary I'm working on is tied to the world that Lex is running in, so some things will be slightly changed for lore purposes, but that's just flavors text, so it's very minor, not really going to hit us.
Statistically and how they function in-game.
No, statistically they function very similar. Unbound has the same lair, legendary actions, all that system that we have. They have the same creature grades from mooks to bosses. They have the basics, HP, AC, attacks, saving throws, all that good stuff. They have skills. So they're going to feel very similar. Yeah.
Rich, what do you mean by bounded?
It is a fairly bounded accuracy system, yes. It is being more fine-tuned, but
it's not inflated. We actually just went through and did a big pass of cutting out a bunch of pointless modifiers. Okay, so in 5e, where 20 AC is a lot, the numbers do go higher than that.
Yeah.
So it's a bit. For example, I am playing in a Sage game right now. A full, pure, fighter style character with heavy armor and heavy kite shield, and I'm sitting at 22 AC.
Yeah.
At character creation.
Yeah.
However, that's pretty high and with a lot of investment.
Indeed.
We do have armor thresholds, so you actually can't get much higher than that at creation.
The system is basically in beta at this point. It's very fucking close. It's fully runnable.
Yeah, we're just doing number tweaking at this point and adding in new talent trees and shit. We haven't got to. And we've forgotten. We've forgotten a couple minor wordings here and there and cleaning up wording before we hire an editor to make it all fancy.
Yeah.
Right. So my current understanding from this conversation so far is that it's effectively an alternate 5th edition conversion from Syrik 5th edition, but already developed to be clear of any 5th edition copyright obligations. Is this correct?
I mean, sort of, not really. It has a lot of 5th edition elements. It's not 5th edition. It basically, think of the system as a classless version of what all the homebrew that I enjoy built into one game system.
Actually, Rich, we've actually almost completely disemparted from Pathfinder, other than a few minor things. We about a year ago, we were very close to that. In the past year, I've done a lot of work. We are essentially our own thing at this point. We have influence from everything, but we are effectively our very.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and we are going through, and I won't lie, some wording things get cleared up as we come to them, just by the nature of what a couple people working on a massive system. The editor stuff is a thing. However, again, we are planning to pay an editor to do a big full pass. It's just, as we save up the money, and we're going to focus on getting the character creation up and running first, because that is more important than just we can do minor wording tweaks as we go, for the most part.
Yeah. Regarding fully finished system, the only thing that we're doing at this point for the core mechanics would be tweaking some like numbers. So like, hey, this feat is a little overpowered because we just added it. Let's make it a little less powerful. Or hey, we realized after a few games that we needed to add something to limit certain features. So like AC thing that was mentioned, that was a more recent addition where you have a max AC based upon your grade. So apprentice, professional, all that good stuff. Basically making the accuracy a bit more bounded.
Yeah, and stuff like that. And hey, this ability, no one's ever purchased it. Let me rework it to make it more appealing.
Yeah.
Or here's an old rule set that we haven't touched because it's kind of worked, but we haven't actually updated it in a while. Let's do a edit pass and see if there's anything we need to change since we did all these other changes.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. But most of the core rules, and there are some rules we're actively simplifying because we started out with we tend to go a bit overboard in the power level at the beginning, but we also have the luxury of being able to adjust quite actively. So, but things are getting much more tuned in nowadays. There was a question earlier. Let me find it. I believe it was Legacy or Witch who asked about restrictions on abilities. So most abilities in the game, especially the powerful ones, have prerequisites that lead a character in a fairly obvious direction. Typically, these come in the forms of being trained in specific skills or having a certain attribute score of a certain level. But not to tangent, but I won't tangent to that. Another thing is, like, one of our biggest talent categories is actually one called supernatural ties. Think of it like special bloodlines that give you special abilities. Now, there's like 80 of these trees, and that might seem overwhelming at first. However, in reality, these trees have a restriction that they have to make sense for the character due to backstory or bloodline or they're going quest to be able to take it. For example, an angelic character wouldn't be able to take the devil tree just because. So there's a lot of, once you get your theme of your character in, a lot of their complexity gets boiled down into there's some obvious choices.
The XP packages will essentially give us a class option for players who want to do that.
Indeed.
Yeah. Switching will not push back the launch date much. The only addition to our timeline would be making sure people are used to running it. So we need to make sure our DM team have that training. So anyone who wants to DM, if we do transition, would need to go through at least a game of running it, preferably 2 or maybe more, just to get used to it, the system. Like I said before, if you've ran Syrik 5e, 1 game should be enough. It's fairly similar. But we will need to have people who've ran it before to be in there with you so we can answer questions that you might have. Because there are some changes that you'll be like, that's weird. I don't know what that means.
2 things. XP packages are something. I mean, I was planning to start working on this week. I'm working on a couple big projects, but one of them can be delayed for stuff like that. XP packages will actually be fairly quick to make.
Mm-hmm.
And my plan, after having talked to Dirk about it in the past, is we would definitely make a package of like, hey, here's your standard fighter, here's your standard wizard, here's your standard cleric, here's your standard rogue, and then maybe some other like more mixed ones. And it'd be like, hey, here's your first 100 XP, here's your apprentice XP, here's your journeyman XP. And you can buy them in any order, but here's the recommended order. And then players can obviously swap stuff out if there's something in there they didn't care for.
Yeah.
As for equipment list, the equipment list has been started on. One of the big projects me and other developer are actually working on right now is we're actually simplifying and updating our crafting system. And part of that will be a giant list of pre-made consumables. Um, One thing about the attributes, they are the base. Okay, the attributes are mostly the same, except for some additional.
Yeah. Wisdom has essentially been combined with intelligence for intellect. Charisma is now called fellowship. Then you have two attributes that are fairly unique to magic users, so that would be thaumaturgy and magic. Spirit is sort of tied to magic as well, but it's kind of its own unique thing. We can go into details there. And then there's luck.
Yeah, and essentially, most characters won't really worry about every attribute. Like if you're playing a fighter, you're probably going to have strength and time, and those are going to be your main stats. And you have a little bit more in others. But well, which you can actually ask Sage about playing a mad character.
I'm currently playing a mad character.
And it works perfectly fine.
Yeah. My character is very good, and I'm mad.
But just for context, he built spread out more than he really should have.
I need all the attributes, all 9.
Well, and he was in the campaign with the players got less attributes than normal. And he's perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're using a low fantasy point buy instead of the standards. So it was difficult, but I've done it. So with the Living World, would be using a standard.
Well, is it harder? I guess it depends what you mean by harder. Well,
difficult in terms of choosing which attributes I want to have as a focus. In that way, yeah. Like making the character being effective, not at all difficult. I was effective from day one. But trying to make which attributes I was willing to sacrifice, that was a difficult choice for me because I was like, I wanted them all. Because I wanted all the builds.
And that's more of a player choice than an inherent system thing, in my opinion. Because every other character in the party is, even the more mad characters aren't even close to him. And it's just like, just easy butter once they've got their initial path of what they want to do decided.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here.
And like you said, it was a low fantasy game and the standard fantasy game for the most part. That issue is alleviated
Yeah.
almost entirely.
Regarding games, I am streaming an Unbound game on Saturdays. Yeah, Unbound Kingmaker. So we do have some games that are out there. I encourage people to stream more if you run them, so we can get even more games available, so people can get an idea of how it functions. I will also probably be making a video at some point in the near future of going on throughout the Unbound guide and just like discussing things and whatnot. Probably in parts because I feel like it'd be easier to digest in parts. Unless,
You
Lex
know,
is doing that, in which case I don't need to do that.
I mean, yeah, I'm always around. I could do like AMA sessions
Mhm.
where I answer questions occasionally.
Yeah. We're going to be doing standard fantasy or heroic fantasy in Unbound, just because Syrik itself is a high fantasy world, so heroic fantasy would make sense. I believe I actually gave heroic fantasy to my Saturday game, so it's working out pretty well. There's a question I saw earlier. Let me go scroll back up. I can answer it. Maybe I'm just blind.
One thing too about the attributes is uh, there is a free attribute scaling in Unbound, so you don't have a 5e, you can choose a feat or an attribute. Every 200 experience you earn, you just get an attribute point in Unbound. Now, there is a max of how many you can put into each individual stat, but it's quite generous in a you can just scale attributes and oh, you need this one to be a little higher, you can bump it up. And that number can probably be adjusted depending on how fast you want characters to get
Yeah,
attributes.
I can definitely set up a comparing contrasting video for 5e and Unbound. Yeah, there's no problem there. That's the point buy. That's in context to the point buy. So, like how for us in Syrik 5e, we've been using a 27 point buy. Uh, in Unbound, there's a scaling range depending on how powerful you want your heroes to feel and how like heroic you want the game to be. We'd probably be going with heroic or standard. Yeah, I'm currently using a low fantasy in the game I play in, and it's working out decently well. I'm a murderous motherfucker, so it's good.
Well, and one thing too, just hearing the free attribute points, people might worry about attribute bloat and getting crazy numbers. There's actually an attribute cap,
Mm-hmm.
and at base, we've gone with the, I believe, 5e route, or like a belt of strength, since your base score of
Yes.
strength. It doesn't actually give you a bonus. There are items called elixirs that can give you a bonus, but they're typically quite expensive, or you have to go find them or
Mm-hmm.
make them with rare materials.
Yeah.
And you're limited to one elixir per character.
It's true. One of the things that Unbound has that would have been concern had it not been a thing, and they're currently working on an update for this to make it even spicier. Um, the equipment. They have a custom crafting system for base mundane and magical items and alchemy items. So, and they're expanding upon it right now. It's actually in the works, as well as the like equipment tiers, like how I have for Syrik 5e with the fine, excellent, superior, etc. qualities. So all my homebrew in that regard, that massive PDF I send out, that's like 300 pages, we don't need to do anything with that because we already have it with
But
Unbound.
I mean, on that comment, ask you something that why I believe Unbound is actually really good for a living world is two things. Rewarding your players with experience. I know one of the hardest things for a living world is, well, when do characters level up, right? That's one of the harder things to balance. Uh, in Unbound, players could go on a small, let's just say a small, easy tier mission. And you're like, you know what? Your newbies, this mission gives 20 experience. They can take that 20 experience and buy a skill, possibly multiple skills. They
Mm-hmm.
could buy an ability. Um, yeah, we have item values and currencies.
Yep.
The equipment shop needs expansion, but like I said, it is setting agnostic, so you can easily
Yeah.
change it
It,
whenever
it
you want.
the equipment also has more of the mundane equipment than my current equipment guide has, so they're actually a bit further along in some regards.
Yeah, we have less magic equipment, mainly because we haven't gotten to there yet. And
Yeah.
in our current update, we're uh, about to release a big table of pre-made alchemical items and
Mhm.
consumable items. But yeah, well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Rewards on the rewards need to be consistent. So I assume you guys have like mission tiers, right?
Yeah.
You can uh just say a mission of this tier always gives this much
Yeah.
XP.
Essentially, all of our back end work that we've been doing in terms of quest rewards for experience and gold value, those still function. They work at essentially as is. The only thing we need to change is instead of saying GP, we'd say SP. And then there we go. We are good to go. We can use those systems. For the experience side of things, we might want to change those numbers to be double what they're listed as, just because the XP values in Unbound are a little different than the XP values we were using with our system. But otherwise, that's literally just two changes, and we're good to go.
I mean, yeah, you can leave it as GP. I would recommend you uh remove copper if that's the case. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we can keep it as GP as well. It's yeah. The book lists everything as S, so it's yeah. People are if they see S, they're gonna be a little confused. So I can see, having dealt with confusions before from this exact issue, I can see a Syrik version of the book just says GP for everything.
yeah, and that wouldn't be hard to do.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean literally I can Control
also,
H and then use goal value S, change that to GP, and then bam, we're good. So 2 clicks.
um, another thing for crafting, and specifically downtime. So we actually have a fairly robust, and not as in complicated robust, but as in a very set downtime system. And one of the downtime system things is characters get a number of downtime actions.
Mm-hmm.
A traveling adventurer gets one per day at base. If you spend a day not traveling or adventuring, you doing air quote downtime, you get 2 additional downtime actions for a total of 3 that day. And there are some abilities that may give you additional downtime actions in certain situations. And for example, crafting a fine quality weapon takes 3 downtime actions. So 1 day or 3 if you're trying. I believe off the top of my head.
Regarding encounter design, part of the bestiary thing I've been working on is going with encounter design as well, so you can get an idea of how many enemies you should use, when you should use them, the flow of combat, and like tactical options that are involved with it. So that's being worked on currently, but it is very similar to the design philosophy we've been using for Syrik 5e.
Yeah. Also, just for context, it's actually very difficult to actually die in Unbound.
Yes.
Uh, so fights actually flow pretty quick. Damage is in a pretty good spot right now. We've really tuned in things. It really depends, but for example, a orc fighter could start the game with 100 hit points. But be playing with a wizard with 30 hit points. And they complete perfectly. They complement each other completely fine in the game. Because the damage scaling of like martial attacks and even spells is actually we're getting it very tuned in now. Where even a lower hit point character feels fine. As for you have to have a hero to not be useless. I've actually won multiple games with no dedicated hero. So one of my big design philosophies in Unbound was I disliked, mainly from Pathfinder, the that if you don't have a channeler, your group's going to die, and that was a bit less on 5e, but you almost always needed a dedicated healer of some sort. Um, so what I've actually gone and done is there are multiple valid healing abilities that all work differently. No, you don't need a dedicated healer at all. You can get away with a couple people having some minor healing abilities. No, that's what I'm saying. I dislike the Pathfinder and 5e philosophy of needing a dedicated healer. And so I've made all the healing abilities comparable in their own right, even if they're personal. Oh yeah, that's not the case. You can go glass cannon, but
Well, here's a question. If someone was to say become a dedicated healer or wish to go into healing, would they have that option?
oh yeah, 100%. You
And would
could,
would they be better than the self healing?
yes, if there's a vested in warranty. But the self healing can sustain in this way. For example, we have lay on hands, which is personal, but can also be used on allies. Uh, and it scales and heals a decent amount. It's not as much as a healing spell, but it's a separate resources. We have a channel which works a bit differently than other systems. But basically, every healing ability in the game works slightly differently. For example, monks have key healing, which gives them a big boost of fast healing for a short amount of time. Um, a dedicated healer would bring more focused healing and more healing options than a blaster caster. For example, the game Nerf is in, they have a dedicated healer. She literally built a pacifist, and she's quite potent.
Mhm.
However, my other group has no dedicated healer, and they've gone into the same deadly encounters both groups have, and both have won the counters in different ways, but they both survived without. It's just, it shifts the threat scale to other areas, right?
Yeah. The big thing regarding core rules at 900th page and all that, the book is modeled after the same layout as the Pathfinder core book from first edition. So that's probably why you're like, why is the rules at 900th page? Just because a lot of the initial page for the core rule book is for character creation and things that you're handling as a character. As for references, that is something that we're working on improving upon the book. But like, if this book, which it will, have a professional person to go through it and edit it, yeah, it's gonna look fucking much cleaner than it is right now. It's just me viewing this book, so it's laid out as best I could as someone who's just really filling things in.
Yeah.
But this, if you ever played first edition Pathfinder or 3.5 or anything of that nature, it's the rule layout, not system, is going to look very familiar to you, just because, hey, look, build your character, you know how to build it there, and then you know how to do combat near the end.
And I don't, a decent amount of people here I actually haven't met because I haven't been in the calls for a while.
Mhm.
If
Now,
anyone here has done professional editing work, we are actually getting ready to hire an editor as a full, you will get paid. So if anyone here has done professional editing work, we are more than willing to hire in-house rather than going outside.
Yeah.
I agree. It's just something we have delayed on because we were doing some big updates, but
There are already artificer dedicated talents. I think they can be expanded upon. They're kind of light right now, but they are currently talents based upon both artificer and for people who are going out monster hunting and like harvesting the parts of like a dead dragon and whatnot.
we're actually adding a bunch of those with the crafting update
Nice,
we're working on right
cool,
now. Yeah,
cool.
that's part of the
They were
thing.
needed.
A big harvester crafter tent extension.
Yeah. Regarding the I just read it and lost it. There it is. Regarding the like lack of say base core rules found in the book, I recently just made a cheat sheet which I'm going to put into parts of it into the playtest document, the 5.8 that I posted earlier. To at the beginning of the book, so you can get a core idea of the core statistics, what they mean, basically glossary, because that is something that is not in the book and needs to be in the book. Because you were right that is something that needs to be there. Like, I mean, that's just building game 101. Put core mechanics and core terminology at the beginning of the book so people aren't confused, and they're not currently there, so I need to do that.
Yeah.
Character sheet PDF. There's not a PDF to my knowledge, unless Lexo can correct me that, but there is a Google Drive sheet that we use that I made that was then expanded upon by some of the team that, yeah. Basically the thing that we're using right now for character sheets for Syrik 5e, they have a version of that. I would need to do some modifications to it to fit better for the living world, in that some things need to be predefined, like these are your choices, period. But that's the only thing that we need to do. So, like, a race drop down, for example.
Yeah, the character sheet we're using is currently a placeholder while we're getting quotes of getting a proper app made, which, as I'm sure many of you know, is a expensive project, but we're diving into it.
That's true. Now, that is a benefit of if we do go for Unbound over Syrik 5e, or Spheres of Divinity, as I'm taking to calling it, in that I won't have to pay someone to make us a website to handle all of our stuff. We'll have it.
Oh, he's getting paid to work on it. Wait, what?
Yep. So I won't need to worry about having a character sheet website browser whatever thingy for us. We would just have it built for us. We'll still want a website in the future for like more of our in-depth living world mechanics, but things like that we will have access to. Any? I don't know if we already answered that. Let me read through yours, Legacy. I am still working on both, regardless of the decision here, because my Friday group currently is on hiatus until I finish Spheres of Divinity. I'm being paid to work on Unbound, so regardless, I'm working on both. I would say for the DM team, continue running games, preferably posting for the community to see, preferably streaming them, especially if you're running Unbound. I would request you guys try out Unbound and post in community, look for players, and stream those games so others who are around can see what your games are like. For general staff, if people are working on content, any of the lore stuff that we are needing to still finish, that is still up for grabs. You guys can still work on that, no problem here. If it's mechanical stuff, as stated last week, if you're wanting to help out with the Spheres of Divinity book, just contact me and we can get together and we can work on the book. I will be publishing it. I will be publishing it for a pay you want for the PDF. If it kicks off and I get enough money to make it like a physical copy, then it will be a pay for the physical copy, but that's just because copy selling physical books costs money because materials and whatnot. So from that regard, if you wanted to work on content, feel free to do that regard. If Flexo has anything that they want to add to that, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, for 5e, we're basically, we don't really need a lot of content to be made. Mechanics are good where they're at. It's more of just converting things to Spheres of Divinity. If you want help with that, then you can get with me.
And anyone who's actually interested in running Unbound, feel free to message me anytime. I'm more than willing to help people, GM and otherwise. Just at me, beat me, whatever. And that goes for any questions. Hell, if you have players that have questions. One thing I'm actually working on is I'm actually finalizing a pre-made one-shot for Unbound that I could just hand to you guys, and you could run it as is. It's a cool little murder mystery in the desert that ends with a fight with a were hyena in an ancient tomb. It's pretty fun. And that is actually going to come with pre-made characters for people to play test. Or you could have them make characters. Either way, it's fine. And as for, I'm working on kind of like a tutorial written guide for character creation, even beyond like what we have in the PDF. But okay, here's what it says in the PDF, which is all the technical step 1 through 10. But here's a separate one that's going to be a separate PDF that's just going to say, hey, here's a player's view of recommendations of what to think about going into character creation.
So going over your second points, Legacy, how will we be introducing Unbound community? Obviously, we have the VODs we're doing right now. We have my stream game. I'll be working on some videos. Imagine Luxo might be doing so as well. To like go over the rule book, go over core mechanics, go over things related to Unbound. We'll be posting those. The announcements channel. I wasn't intending to do this unless the vote for the community to vote and all that went towards Unbound, and hey, look, it did. So that is my intention going forward, is to make these videos to help
Do
people
we have
get
a
used
quick
to the
start
system.
guide for Unbound? Also, great point that got brought up. Do we have a Syrik tools equivalent framework?
Yeah, no, Unbound has a full framework that we can use. As for a quick start guide, that will be with the videos I'm working on. Second point. The tutorial VODs I'm mentioning, those will help encourage people to set up the system. The DM team running the games will help the community learn the system and test the system. Maybe Lexo can put more incentives in that regard so people can test it out more. That's on them, though.
In what regard? Sorry, I was reading. I heard my name.
How can we start encouraging people to start learning testing the system? So if you have anything you want to add to that particular topic, feel free.
One big thing, like I said, and I mean this, because this is getting posted on YouTube, hashtag not an advertisement, just so it's clear. But on both ends, as I mentioned with NERP, our team, while we obviously are paying for this out of pocket, we have a set budget every month. And if people do, let's say you're a DM that really gets into Unbound, and you start helping NERP on the work he's doing or whatever, if it's work that can be, or you're fine with it being adapted in the core rulebook, we will pay for your time. I mean, we offer NERP a reasonable amount to do work for us, and
Technically, they offered me more, but I was like, I'm good with my standard fee.
That being said, we do have a limited budget because we are completely out of pocket. But we have since the beginning paid anyone for work they've done for our system. So if you start DMing or you start making a character which is why I made the offer of if anyone here has done like professional level editing work, we would prefer to hire in-house than go find someone to do it. But we're planning to get an editor soon anyway because, as has been pointed out, it's needed, and we're
Mhm.
finally getting to the point where we just need it done right when they do that.
Yeah.
So
Regarding the rulebook, um, coming from having started with 3.5 and then going to Pathfinder, the rulebook seems pretty fine to me, but I can definitely see from a 5e point it needs some fixes. I mean, there's things in it that I know that needs fixes, so I can see that being a hindrance to our pushing forward. However, once an editor is provided and the book does get properly posted from that regard, I feel like at that time we'll be in a similar timeline in terms of it's not going to hold us back much. Essentially, is what I'm getting at. But I can see what you mean. It for the community to properly use Unbound, we're going to want the book to be a bit cleaner.
well, and for example, the thing with the book is great for some things, but also we're going to make an SOD for a reason. So people would prefer to open up a website. And like the character app we're getting included, we plan on having connected to the SRD. If anyone's used D&D Beyond, where you can like build your character through the app and you get a drop down of choices and you can search for that talent and it's all connected to our SRD. That's essentially what we're planning to do. And it will potentially be free. Hopefully, we need to look at how much it costs to upkeep that. There might be a very minor subscription, but I can promise you this: it would not be $30 a month per player. Oh God, no, never. If anything, it would be like 5 for unlimited character sheets. Therefore,
Yeah.
uh, so
I feel like the big holdback from Unbound in terms of like ease of access would be the lack of SRD, but they're, like I said, they're working on getting, a website for it. Once that's made, we'll actually be in a better position than 5e because, Spheres of Divinity is going to have a similar issue of lack of SRD. So, yeah. Right now, both on the same page where we can't easily just Google a question. Once Unbound is pushed that way, because they're actually going to be going with that route faster than I will be. However, my World Anvil is essentially a version of an SRD. It's just so it's sort of there, but it's a slow going process. If we have more people to help out, cool. But
but World Anvil is also their search engine sucks.
yeah. So yeah, no drawbacks, benefits.
And just for a timeline for people, our roadmap currently looks like big project right now is our crafting update, which is going to have a bunch of stuff. And I am also planning to release a pretty big talent update along with that. I mentioned it in the message I posted earlier, but NERP actually requested I um, make a binder equivalent
Mhm.
in Unbound. So that's actually something I'm personally working on. Those should be released around the same time. From there, I plan on just, which hopefully the crafting update will be next week, if not the week after, depending on how things go. Um, After that, my next thing is dive into experience packages. Norp is already working on pre-made spells. And those two things will simplify choice and character creation uh, quite heavily. And those shouldn't take too long to get done. The spells are a bit just kind of tedious putting them together. Uh, Especially there's actually going to be thing. And then once the pre-made packages are done, the next thing on the list will be the editor of the PDF, followed by the SOD after that. And the only thing limiting that is funds, but that's not stuff you guys really have to worry about. So, as for the magic, there is spell chance failure from heavy armor. However, there are ways to mitigate that, materials, talents, whatnot. If you want to be a mage in heavy armor with a power shield, you can technically do it.
Yeah.
Um,
So for spellcasting, there are ways to be heavy armor casters without spell failure chance. It's going to be difficult to do, but there are ways to do it. There's also talents that can reduce those issues as well, so it can be a bit easier if you build into it. Regarding the spell list and invisible spells and upcasting, one of the things that Unbound has on Syrik 5e, or Spheres of Divinity, is that they have a spell crafting system, which we do not have. So we don't need to make that for Syrik. And the system itself feels pretty nice.
Here's the big thing with magic, not to cut you off here, but I feel like it should be brought up. And to warn everyone, this is a prep yourself, because I have gotten a lot of initial gasps of horror when people initially hear this. However, in reality, it plays very well. Spellcasting in the system is a skill check. As I wait for the shock and awe to wear off. But yes, casting is a spell check. So there's no more, hey, I cast the first level spell, and it just happens. You have to roll a skill check in the same way the fighter has to roll an attack roll.
Yeah. That is
However,
a big difference between the two. However, spells are pretty potent.
Spells are much more versatile and potent. And mages are very distinctive in what they can do. And there are a lot of ways to mitigate that. A lot of ways to mitigate that.
Yeah. As a dedicated caster, you're probably never really going to fail a spell cast. As a partial spellcaster, like I'm playing on Saturday, I can fail if I roll low, but it's not the end of the world.
And you can take actions to lower that chance.
Yeah.
One of the other big things I want to address is kind of in D&D for years, it's been mages are way more powerful. They are the win more button. I've actually had multiple people who have come from 5e and other systems who have actively hated martial characters because magic users just get so much more cool stuff. And it has been a renowned mages have all their cool toys and their versatility. But there is not you're never bored as a martial character.
Yeah, no, martials have their own system, which makes them pretty fun.
And a lot of the systems, we don't have overlap. So people are unique in their unique ways, for the most part. But you can mix and match if you want both.
Yeah. Regarding the attribute system, since I see you mentioning it being a core stat, I wouldn't worry about a trade-off because you have attribute categories. So your strength, dexterity, con, they're in the body category. Your intellect, fellowship, and thaumaturgy, they're in the mind category, and then your magic, spirit, and luck are in the soul category. And you have point buy for each of those categories with a high, mid, and low, kind of like with VTM has, or Old War Darkness if you played that system before. So you choose one of those categories to be your highest points, your mid points, your lowest points, and then you can build into those. So, and then you have some freebie points that you can spend in any of those categories. So you're not really going to be having Z trade-offs. More of, I think a good way to look at it is if you are going a full martial you're not going to need certain attributes, so you can just go certain things entirely and just be like, yeah, I don't really need magic. If you're going like a mix, you're going to want a lot of attributes, like I am. But with a heroic point buy or a standard point buy, you'll have the points you can do an effective and unique character, regardless.
So
Yeah, it's just one of those things. As in terms of negatives for trait races, correct me if I'm wrong, but they do not exist. Correct, Alexa?
what do you mean, negative attributes?
Yeah, things of that nature.
No, there are races that take a penalty to certain attributes.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to be making custom rations anyways, because like their elves do not fit our elf theme, their dwarfs don't fit our dwarf theme, but I actually already have the conversion made, so we're good to go.
Well, and a lot of those are easily. Every rule set in the game has been made with a structure that can be easily modified.
Mhm.
So that was kind of one of the things. The stick on magic rubric, though, there's legacy wanted to walk through, and which seems worried about the chance to fail. So the chance to fail is actually only in combat. And I know that's when it matters most. But one of the big things is um, hard reaction. There are skills attached to every stat except luck. Luck doesn't have a stat. I mean, technically, a professional gambler, you could do luck, but luck modifies all other rules potentially. So that's whatever it is. Sorry, tangent. Out of combat, you never have to roll a skill check to cast the spell. Basically, we have a rule of if you are not under a pressured situation that's time sensitive, you just cast in the fight. In combat, obviously, you do have to make rolls. Uh, for the most part, like a cantrip, for example, it's a DC 10. Most majors aren't going to fail that, and if they're even a tiny bit focused, it's very hard to fool that. And so the way majors work is we don't have classes. We have things called casting traditions. When you make a mage, you pick which casting tradition you want. Which we have 15 options currently, but we're working on expanding those with some sub options. For example, Blood Mage just got a alternative option recently.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and every tradition kind of tweaks how your magic works. But the short version is spells are designed with spell points. Every level of spell has a set amount of spell points, and you can increase these or reduce depending on what. Every effect and modifier costs a different amount of spell points. Uh, Pre-made spells will be completely pre-made, and you won't have to design them. And they're a good base for you to tweak as a mage. If your spell fails, you can save the mana quite reliably if you're even well invested into it for the most part.
So regarding spell components, the Magic Tradition system actually has a trait and drawback. You can choose to make your tradition more unique. Spell components do not exist unless you take the flaw, the drawback for them. So your spells innately do not have verbal or somatic components unless you choose that flaw. Generally, those will be the most common because the other ones are pretty brutal or unique for flavor purposes. Like I chose some pretty brutal ones for my character. But yeah, no. Most people
And we're
probably go for
working
verbal
on
and somatic.
and we're working on expanding those because
Yeah.
So that DC Witcher or Witch Reaver, sorry. That DC, so level 1 spell would be 14 at base. Most traditions go with that. like on average, but like I said, it completely depends on the tradition. There's a tradition that doesn't have to roll for cantrips, and is a DC 10 level 1. If
For
you guys go high fantasy, the average skill check will be,
probably like 10, maybe 11.
well, 6 plus. I mean, rank and attribute alone
For a
will do
focused one, you
6.
can get to like 12, 14.
Yeah, you can get to a plus like 10 to
Yeah,
11
but
after.
for example, my heavily mad character, who is in a low fantasy point buy, who is at the beginning was definitely not a focus spellcaster, has a +6 in magic casting. So they on average had to roll an 8 to succeed. On a first level spell at apprentice level. A specialist person, I believe, had a +10 at the same time, so they had to roll a 4.
Yeah.
For the most part, you're
And
going to be making a pretty good chance of success.
yes, that was 40% on a, I wouldn't even say non-specialized ritual. That was on a purposefully under-specialized with low fantasy.
Yeah, I under specialized them because it was more of a story thing that was like just tied to my backstory I was learning and getting into. So
Yeah,
my magic was
it,
not at all focused.
with high fantasy, she probably would have had like a 7 or an 8.
I definitely
And
would have
that
had an 8.
that specialized character probably would have had 11 or 12 to the check calculation
Mm-hmm.
with what she took. But
Yeah,
there are other options.
yeah. And then there's certain things that we can apply. One of the things that we're going to be bringing over would be the destiny system. So if you do want to, save, oh, I failed this check by like 1 or 2, hey, look, roll a destiny point. There you go. Or you can use luck. Luck is a thing that's built into the system, but it doesn't
Well,
apply to the world's overall villain points. So
yeah, so, enemy saves and attacks. Applying spells to enemies. When you actually launch a spell, you choose for it to be a save or an attack. Means you can invest into saves and attacks. And you can do that even with like AoE spells. You could launch a fireball type spell that's an attack roll, not a save. Um,
Mhm.
I've seen characters start the game with a DC 17 save and a level 1 spell, but that's a specialized character. I believe a first level fireball for Sage was 14.
Yeah.
However, Sage is not invested in saves. He's doing a spell strength build, so he's an attack spell character.
Yeah.
Um,
And my spell save DC, I believe, for first level is 15. So it's a little higher, but um, yeah. My character, I will attack with my sword to imbue it with the magic that I'm casting. So I'll be like, hey, look, fireball, slap. So I'd probably change it to a cone instead of fireball, so I don't slap myself.
yeah, you can do a cone with spell strike and
Mm-hmm.
then attack with the cone and do all this cool stuff.
Yep. I'm essentially playing a magus if you've looked into Pathfinder. My spells can be shot through my sword. For apprentice, +5 for body saves.
It's actually quite invested.
Yeah, that's pretty high for a body save.
Well, it depends on the creature to be sure.
Yeah. For a humanoid creature, it's pretty high. For a creature such as like a troll, that's pretty low. Because trolls are pretty heavily in their body.
I mean, most characters will have an average of probably
Or I guess not low would be average.
with no investment and no racials. Will probably have a 2 or 3 in every save on average for a normal game. A high fantasy that probably goes up to a 3 average, maybe 4.
Yeah. One of the things that we have in Syrik 5, Spheres of Divinity, is the ballistic armor class system, which is essentially touch AC. So they don't add their armor bonus or natural armor bonus to AC. Unbound has a similar thing, which if you play Pathfinder, it's touch AC and flat-footed AC. Spells go off against touch AC, unless something wibbly wobbly happens, and then they go against normal AC or whatever.
Like a spell shot.
Yeah. So essentially system we already have. Unbound has as well for spells, except for their spells just innately go off of the lower AC.
And there's some additional rules we're adding to spells that I haven't got to yet that will tweak some things. Um,
I would say doing the full effect of your spell cast is more like for a proper dedicated caster, like an 80-90% chance of success, especially if you have some luck. If you're a partial caster like I am, I've had horrible player rolls, to be clear. I would say about 65% of the time my spells have gone off when I'm casting my highest level spell, which is difficult for me.
so, Saccharide, essentially, for the past 2.5 years, have run almost exclusively for new players. Like, either they've only played 5e, or a lot of them have never played D&D ever. And while there has been initial learning, but that goes for any system, once they've gotten a hang of it, and they usually get a hang of it within the first month of playing, typically the first few sessions. Both. Some of the players have only ever played 5e. Some of them have never played D&D ever. So that is a good thing. There's with any new system, there's always some growing pains for these players, but once they figure it out, they. Oh, I agree, Legacy. I agree. That's totally a thing. So, however, my players who I never played before is actually DMing Unbound for a group of friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, she never played D&D, let alone ran a game until she played. And she started running that game after playing for 5 months. So,
So for numbers of players, I don't know about Lexo's games. I am currently running a game that has uh, one player who is familiar with the game, but hasn't played in like a year or something like that. I have two people who are entirely new. One of which have only been playing like 5e for like a couple sessions, so they're like super super new. Then I have Devil. I don't know when they last played for Unbound. I think it's been like a year or 2
4 years.
for them. 4 years.
3 or 4 years.
So they're fairly new too. The system's completely different from what they played. So I would consider them new to Unbound as well. And then you have Lexo, who is the creator. So for Lexo's games, I know that our Saturday game started off with, I believe, 3 people who are fairly new.
And they left for unrelated reasons.
Well,
so
one of them was myself. The other one was another person, and they left for unrelated reasons. Yeah.
But just for example, I've probably ran in the past 2.5 years for close to 40 players who have only ever played 5e or never played before. And I run for parties of 5 people on average.
In terms of surveys feedbacks, I don't know if you have any of those currently on hand, Lex, but
I don't have a long hand.
I feel like you should make a poll in that case for your server so we can get that data to the community here.
Yeah, I can do that pretty easily. One more thing for Rich, the impact of the system.
I feel like there's a dog barking in their background right now. Or perhaps people coming into their room.
Yeah, sorry about that. As for impact of spells, yes, spells are fairly impactful. Like, for example, let's say you're just playing a blaster caster, right? Just I deal damage. Um, I believe you can get upwards of I'm just doing a bit of math in my head. That would be blah, blah, blah. So that would be for example, a blaster caster with very minor focus, and I mean very minor, they could juice it a lot more, could shoot a ray of fire at a guy and deal an average of 26 damage, and that's an average. And that's with a small to moderate amount of investment on a focus mage. You could play a mage who is I only ever deal one element of damage, and I am the font of fiery power that will destroy the world, who invests heavily into it, and they would deal more than that. And that's not character creation. That will probably one shot, if not almost one shot, my minor enemies are fighting at that point. And we actually have a system where if you kill an enemy of a certain tier, we call them loops, you actually get your action refunded and can do it again.
Yeah.
But that's unrelated, so.
Mooks are for the very cinematic, heroic murder, death thing, like, Helm's Deep from Lord of the Rings. So if you want to feel for that, you can build that into your encounters. And generally, the standard Mook level enemies that we'll be using in most encounters will be lesser rank. But Mooks will be like the mass swarm of enemies that we want to, have fun doing murder stuff with. In terms of having hard data, yeah, we definitely need to get some more hard data for peeps. I mean, the only stream game I'm aware of for Unbound is mine, because I don't believe Lux has streamed any of theirs, and I don't believe other people have done any of that. One thing that would help out Luxo would be if you can get your community to start posting, looking for groups or looking for players here, and maybe even streaming if they're comfortable with that. That would be very helpful, I'd say.
Yeah,
But
sure.
feedback
I mean,
form and all that would be helpful too.
maybe we can get Saturday streaming. I will try to talk to the group about that.
I mean, I'm pretty sure Saturday's wanting you to stream, but you're like, this is a dark fantasy campaign. It's
Well,
probably not
I
the best
was
idea.
worried that start, but I think we can start streaming.
Okay.
So, which I would, I mean, it never feels good to fail a check, right? I feel like that is the same for a fighter too. Oh, I missed my attack.
Mm-hmm.
Well, shit, here I am. One of the benefits Unbound actually has is because.
Do you in 5e?
No, he's talking about spellcasting.
Oh, for spellcasting. I mean, they can always just save it, suck.
No, he's talking about the check. But yeah.
Oh, yeah, the initial
fun.
casting, I can see. Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, that's fair, which, however, it's just a shift of power of the fighter still felt bad, even though the wizard didn't care, right? Like, it definitely is a bit of a getting used to thing. But one of the huge benefits, no, I'm talking about missing attack rolls. If you miss, it feels bad, no matter what character you're playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's new to mages. There's 5e didn't have that, but it's no different than any other skill check they might make that they could.
You might actually lose resources for fighters because there's a stamina system, which I've built into Syrik 5e, that Unbound uses for all of like the martial abilities that fighters can use. It's not like an all the time thing, but if you're wanting to use something like a forceful strike that punctures armor, you can spend stamina to do that as a martial character.
Yeah, fighters have abilities. Some of them you can spend stamina after the attack and get a bonus, so after you see if you hit. But some of the more impactful ones, you have to spend before you attack, so you're risking a resource.
Yeah. The big thing I would say would be that for martials, they can always just swing their sword and their attack might miss, not really wasting any resource. but you could spend resources to boost that attack. Mages, they can cast cantrips and not really losing anything, and they're still the same effectiveness as swinging a sword. Because
Yeah,
cantrips don't cost mana.
And our cantrip scale, so they can actually keep up slightly with the motion character.
They're akin to 5e cantrips in that they scale and they're effective still.
But what I was going to say is one of the big benefits of Unbound is there are a lot of abilities you can get that don't require a skill check. You just do them.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, you could have a character with magic, and even if you fail your spellcast, you still have another action where you could use something that doesn't require a check.
As an example, my character, I spell strike a lot, so I swing my sword, push my spell through the sword. I can use my other action to channel an aura of like death that causes people, to suffer some pain. And that's just I click it and it goes off. And they get a save for half damage. So they're going to be suffering something regardless. And that's something that I've kind of built into to get my wombo combo going pretty fun. It was just 1 feat actually. But, there are things that caster-themed character can do that will not have the, spend resource, feels bad because I failed to make a check. There are certain things, like if you go down the hex tree, a lot of those will be up your alley, I'd feel. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, hexes, and well, that's the thing, which only the spell heal could fail, technically.
Mm-hmm.
But
if you channel energy to heal, it's going to just pop off.
Mm-hmm.
Lay on Hand's going to pop off. Grenades are probably going to pop off. I mean, you might miss, but
yeah,
I mean,
we have healing bombs.
those.
And like I said, I mean, Devil and Saturday uses healing bombs.
Mm-hmm.
And they're quite potent.
Yeah.
He's just throwing stuff at us and we get better. I'm sure that's fun.
There's a lot of different talents that can give you the feel of a caster without the risk that you're fearing from actual spellcasting. However, actual spellcasting, having not started heavily into it and then building heavily into it, it's really fun.
Well,
but I like crunch, so if you don't like crunch, there's other options for you.
Sacred, one thing to address that is while other systems have abilities that happen without a check. Yes, that's true. I mean, that goes for every system. However, in my experience, those abilities are usually weaker. Or, I mean, for those of you who have played Pathfinder, there are tons of flavorful abilities that mechanically are just kind of garbage. I don't know. I've played enough 5e where I feel some of it's like that a little bit. There are abilities that are really good, but there's always those abilities that are just like, it's flavorful. One thing I have dedicated a lot of time to in this system is, and not all of them are done, and some of them need work, as with everything. But most abilities work in a unique way where they mechanically matter on their own.
Mm-hmm.
For example, our characters Lay on Hands and Saturday, they just reached professional rank. Her Lay on Hands deals 32 hit points per application for just a quick action touch. No check, no nothing. It just
I mean,
happens.
if she touches herself, it's quick action. If she touches another, it's about base.
I mean, yeah, but there are also ways to do it at range.
Yeah,
and do
there's
it.
some wibble wobbles you can do with building.
Mm-hmm. And that's picking up one ability with no investment into it otherwise.
Yeah.
That was 25 XP.
Now, one of the things that is going to feel different from 5e to Unbound is level 1, you're going to feel immediately that the damage and HP are on a different level than 5e. Because, like, level 1 character in 5e, you're going to have, like 12 HP if you're a beefy fighter, or a really, really beefy ranger, or a cleric or something like that. And Unbound, you're probably going to have, for a beef tank of a fighter, like 70 HP, 80 HP. If you're like a wizard, you're probably going to have like 30 HP. But the HP itself, it's
The minimum hit points in the game, if you just keep the base 10, no investment, is 20 hit points.
yeah. In terms of massive damage by Arrow Friend, no. Unbound has a mortal wound system. So if you go to death, you don't actually die. You just go into a state of dying where additional attacks will cause a mortal wound. Similar to 5e, however, those wounds remain until healed through powerful magics or some really long-term care.
But there's plenty of ways to remove it.
Yes.
Consumables, skill checks, in a week at time, a spell that you can go to the city and just buy the services of a cleric in the church. Hey, remove this wound, whatever. Yeah, if anyone has questions they would like to be answered in a more long-term detailed thing, feel free to tag on to what Legacy said.
Yeah. Any additional questions that could be added to a poll would be helpful. And Lexo, since you're the head of your server for Unbound, feel free to copy paste us and whatnot, make that. Or I can make the poll for you, and I can just link you it so you can send the link.
But yeah, I'll probably make my own poll as that and also get feedback from my existing players. Because that seems to be something that is quite typically wanted.
Yeah. In terms of my players, I can send the poll as well, but I mean, your server has all the people that are in my game, so
yeah.
I think we can just put the one link and be fine. I don't know if anyone here in this server has played like heavily in Unbound. I know some people here do because some players I have share this server with Unbound. But I don't know how heavily the population here has played Unbound. But yeah, no, massive damage is not really a thing in Unbound. However, one of the things that you can do that Pathfinder had is coup de grace. So if someone's sleeping and you're an assassin, you want to go assassinate that random guard, you can do so. As a player side of things, we're going to mitigate that for purposes of PvP, because we have to keep that in mind, unlike base Unbound.
Base coup de grace for players, basically how it works is it gives them an immediate save against each one of the wounds. So they get like 4 checks to not die.
Yeah.
Which you can spend resources on.
Yeah, it's not as brutal as Pathfinders, but it is something that we will definitely need to look at if we go with Unbound as our official system.
But that goes for anything with PvP. Yeah. PvP is always a problem.
Yep.
What's average turn times look like?
For people who are like super fleshed into the rules, turn times can go pretty quickly. If you are like brand new, especially to RPGs in general, it might take you a little bit of time. The longest turn I've seen has been about 10 minutes, and that's because we had to like look up some rules, and there was like some backtracking and things like that. But
that was also a player who was playing a bit weird.
Yeah.
On average with new players, especially at the beginning of a campaign with a new character, even a new player typically, on average, maybe a minute, because they usually only have 1 or 2 abilities at that point. And as long as they're paying attention, and it's like, okay, I'm going to do this, even if they're new and need things explained, it's usually not that long. There are exceptions, like he said, if a random rule comes up, which very rarely happens, or a player is like, hey, I'm going to try this crazy thing no one was ready for. How does it work? Which it's hard to mitigate that in any system.
Yeah.
But as long as players are paying attention, it doesn't take too long.
Essentially, if players are following the standard decorum of paying attention to what's happening in the combat and having made plans during other people's turns, what they're going to do on their turn, rounds should be going by really quickly. Obviously, things will change. Like, if someone changes your plan right before your turn happens, it might take a bit longer. But like if you know what you're gonna do, you can finish your turn in a matter of like 30 seconds. Because bam, bam, boom, done. In terms of action economy, it's fairly similar to 5e in that 5e has a bonus action, it has an action, and then you have your move. Obviously, there's like item interaction as well for like some small side things in your action. Um, Unbound has 2 basic actions and then a quick action, and then you have your your reaction system. Essentially, if you want to move, you'd use one of your basic actions, or you can spend some stamina and use a quick action. But overall, the action economy is very similar.
Mhm. There are a few minor changes, like in 5e, you can move around enemies, and as long as you don't leave their area, you don't provoke. We use the old version of if you move through their area, you can provoke. However, there are movement actions that don't provoke, and there are abilities that say you don't provoke for a number of squares. And so you can make a super agile dodgy character. Or you can make an acrobatics check to just ignore that and tumble
Yeah.
through.
I will say, having ran 5e for a while and then jumping into the Unbound game, that's I think like 5 sessions in now, maybe 6. The first 2 sessions, it took me a little bit to be like, oh yeah, this particular rule is different between the 2 systems. Just because attacks of opportunity, reaction attacks, are different how they're handled. Because moving out of a space in 5e triggers it, moving through a threatened or out of a threatened triggers in Unbound. So it's a slightly shifting rule, but once you get used to it, doesn't take too long. It's a-okay. And then there's feats that can be like, whatever, I don't care. Which is true in 5e. Mm-hmm. Any other questions, things to bring up? We'll definitely be going over, as you suggested, Legacy the next couple of weeks, just playtesting, getting some feedback surveys and whatnot. I would say do not expect a meeting next week, but the follow-up week we'll probably have some decent info and some new things to share. Unless something crazy happens. Basically, keep an eye on the meetings, times, channel, and we can go from there. But before we close out, any other things people want to bring up? Framework stuff. Yes, for framework stuff, there is the full framework. I've expanded upon the framework that they used. It has a lot of the not modular, a lot of the things that speed up character creation, token creation that we have in Syrik 5e. So like the property management system, that's in there. You can just click a little button and you make your character right off the bat. There are macros that will let you make a weapon attack or a spell. Just bam, boom, boom, done. I'm intending on expanding upon them so they're easier to use from a user's perspective. Right now, they're a little like, this is a weird macro, but they have comments, so they tell you how to do it. But I intend to make them visually appealing.
We have a player who we use as a litmus test for things. He is probably the most extreme player of you can imagine of, oh my god, I can't figure this out for even basic stuff. So we use her as a litmus test of, can you figure out this macro?
Yeah.
Yes? Awesome. It's good for most people.
Yep. Feel free to think up your ideas, Ryan, but you were wanting to say something, Zach? Yeah, I'm not going to announce playtester happening. I heavily encourage the team to playtest the system to see how it feels for them, because ultimately, while the community and I really enjoy, I really enjoy Unbound, the community wants to use Unbound. If we do not have a DM team to run Unbound, we don't have a living world. So I want to make sure everyone's on board. But I definitely encourage anyone who's still interested in DMing here, or living world game master roles or anything of the co-DMs and whatnot, do look into the system, do run a few playtests yourself, or even just like watch some videos on how it works, or when I post those videos, look at those.
Yeah. And Nerp and I
Da,
can
da,
talk about that
da.
maybe to get that going. Because that's something I actually tried to do a long time ago. Um, that being said, if any DMs are going to look into Unbound, if I mean, hell, if you want, maybe make a small channel or something where I can just come sit in here and help people
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
work on stuff.
In terms of a form for feedback for the system, Legacy, if you can get that set up for a feedback form, making sure it's anonymous so people don't have to worry about being, like, why would you think this? Derba derba der. I'm not going to be like that, but give people the ease of thought. If you can get that set up for them, you can have it on your own drive so people won't have to worry about it. And just, give me the results so I can look at their thoughts and we can go over those during meetings and whatnot, or just as we go forward. I know that we already have a server-wide feedback form. One specifically for the team I feel would be helpful, as well as an addition to that one. Yeah, pretty much.
That reminds me, I made a uh, Unbound suggestion poll, but never posted it in my server. I should do that tonight.
Yes,
Thank you for the reminder. I'll go do that right now, actually.
definitely what you're saying there, Lexi. In terms of suggested features, I know your framework's been looking pretty fucking shiny, so any suggestions I'm happy to hear. If it's going to be a lengthy one, probably for like sometime over the week, just because I have a game coming up soon and I need to do some pre-prep for it still. But if it's just like, hey, I want to show you this quick feature, I'm good for it. If you want to just be like, let's set up a meeting time, I'm good for that too. Gotcha. We can definitely do that then. Yeah, just message me. We can set up a time. Regardless, though, I will be needing a framework update for 5e as well as Unbound. Or not really Unbound, but I'm going to be updating 5e's framework and Unbound's as we go forward as things change and need to be updated. So, either those suggestions for 5e or things you think might be useful for Unbound are welcome. Yeah. Anything else anyone would like to bring up? Anything to note? And if I want to be clear, as I did mention earlier, while the community is definitely on board for Unbound, and I definitely like Unbound, I think it would be. I mean, it has a lot of the homebrew I really, really fucking enjoy. If the DM team cannot do it, even if the community really wants to try it, I think they'll understand that, hey, the team cannot handle this. We'll have to stick with Spears of Divinity.
And along the same lines, if as GMs you guys see a rule and you're like, we really don't want to have to run that rule that way or
Mm-hmm.
whatnot, come to me and tell me because we active and like I said, I'll be adding an anonymous suggestion form to my server. I'll maybe I'll give it to Nerp and he can post it for you guys here for a system suggestion thing once you read through it. We are actively looking for feedback to change rules and stuff to make them easier to learn. Uh, our biggest limitation on the system right now is or was the lack of DMs. I mean, we've had 5 or 6 people run the system, um, but obviously they might have not seen things. You guys will see or have different opinions. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we have made many different changes upon DM requests. So I am more than happy to hear what goes on.
Yep. All right. Anything else anyone would like to bring up? Things to note down, things to discuss. All right. Well, in that case, appreciate everyone showing up, all that good stuff. Appreciate all the feedback you've been providing. I see people typing now. That timing. Gonna wait. Okay. Cool. TFP.
Profile.
Profile picture. Oh, okay, yes. Because Gibbons is awesome. Plus, my player drew them, so I wanted to support my player who drew them. Because it shows their, that they drew. In case they want to get some commissions done, they have it. Yeah. Any which ways. Appreciate everyone showing up. All that good stuff. Good meeting. We got a lot of information through. We got some decent discussions going on and all that good stuff. Obviously, things are not set in stone at this point in time, but as requested, if you guys are looking to Dungeon Master, Game Master, whatever, do look into Unbound, just to see how it flows with you as a game, and continue working on things that you're working on, all that good stuff. And as always, appreciate all the hard work you've been doing throughout all these many months that we've been working on this. I'm going to close out the recording here, though, so